My dad kicked me out at 17 to make room for my stepsister. Years later, he begged me to fund her education, so I exposed their lies and watched them crumble without me. Alright, let me start by saying this is gonna sound like a bad soap opera, but I swear, every word is true. When I was 17, my dad, James, married a woman named Kathy, who came with her 16-year-old daughter, Bella. Now, Bella was everything I wasn't. She was the golden child, cheerleader, honor roll, constantly showered with praise, while I was just me. I wasn't failing school or causing trouble or anything, but I guess being quiet and average wasn't enough for my dad anymore. Things were already tense when Kathy and Bella moved in. Bella didn't like me, and she didn't hide it. She made little comments about how weird I was or how my room smelled. It didn't. And if I said anything back, suddenly, I was the bad guy for picking on her. Kathy acted like I didn't exist, and my dad? He was too busy bending over backward to keep her happy. But then, the bomb dropped. One night, my dad sat me down and said, "Look, Jake, we've got to make some adjustments. Bella needs her own room to focus on school, and Kathy thinks it'd be better if you moved out." I was stunned. Moved out? Where am I supposed to go? "Well, you've got options," he said, like this was no big deal. "You can stay with your mom." Here's the thing, my mom left when I was a kid. I hadn't seen her in years, didn't even know where she lived. When I told him that, he shrugged and said, "You're old enough to figure it out." Let that sink in. I was 17, with no job, no savings, and no family to turn to. He was kicking me out because his shiny new family didn't have room for me. So, I packed my stuff. All I had was a duffel bag and a few $100 I'd saved from mowing lawns. I couch-surfed with friends for a while, slept in my car sometimes, and worked whatever crappy jobs I could find. I'm not gonna lie, it was rough. I was bitter, angry, and felt like the biggest failure ever. But that's just the start. You won't believe what happened when I finally got my life together. Fast forward a couple of years. I worked my butt off to survive. After I turned 18, I got a full-time job in construction. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I rented a tiny studio apartment, and for the first time in a while, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet. I won't pretend I didn't still think about what my dad did. It ate at me every day, but I used that anger to push myself harder. I started taking online classes in business management, while still working full-time. I had this crazy dream of running my own contracting company one day. Around that time, I got a random Facebook message from Bella. She said something like, "Hey Jake, can you send me $200? My car needs new tires, and Dad's being difficult." Are you kidding me? I hadn't heard a word from her or my dad in years. Not a happy birthday. Not a how are you doing? Nothing. And now she was hitting me up for money? I ignored the message. A week later, my dad called me. I wasn't even sure how he got my number. I let it go to voicemail, and surprise, surprise, he wanted to catch up. I didn't call back. The next thing I know, I'm getting another message from Bella, but this time, she wasn't so sweet. "Wow, can't believe you're so selfish. We're family, Jake. I guess that doesn't mean anything to you anymore." I'll admit it, I lost it. I wrote back, "Family? You mean the same family that kicked me out so you could have a bigger room? Funny how that works." She blocked me. I thought that was the end of it, but oh no, it gets better. One night, I came home from work and found my dad sitting on the steps outside my apartment building. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen him in over 2 years. He looked older, more tired, and honestly, a little desperate. "Jake," he said, standing up like this was some emotional reunion. "Can we talk?" I should have told him to get lost. Every part of me wanted to. But against my better judgment, I let him in. And that's when he dropped the bombshell. So, my dad walks into my shoebox of an apartment, looking around like he expected better. I didn't bother offering him a seat. I crossed my arms and said, "What do you want, Dad?" He sighed, like this was hard for him. "Jake, I need your help. Bella, she's struggling." "Struggling?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You mean the golden child? The one who got everything while I got tossed out like trash? She's your sister, Jake." "No, she's your problem." He ignored that. She just got into this great university, but we're short on money for her tuition. I thought, now that you're doing better, you might want to pitch in. You know, help your family. I actually laughed. It just burst out of me because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want me, the burden you kicked out, to pay for her college? Are you serious right now? She's your sister, he said again, like that was supposed to mean something. You don't understand how hard things have been for us. Oh, I don't? I snapped. I was homeless at 17, Dad. I slept in my car because you didn't want me anymore. I busted my ass to get here, and now you want a handout? For Bella, of all people? Jake, come on. He pleaded. I made mistakes, I admit that, but this is your chance to show you're the bigger person. I stared at him, trying to process the audacity. He wasn't sorry about what he did to me. He just wanted my money. You want to know what being the bigger person gets you, Dad? I said, leaning in. It gets you kicked out of your own house and ignored for 2 years. So no. I'm not helping you or Bella. You can both figure it out like I had to. He looked stunned, like he couldn't believe I said no. He stood there for a second, probably waiting for me to change my mind, but I didn't. Finally, he muttered, "You'll regret this," and walked out. I slammed the door behind him. My heart was pounding, and I was angry, but also weirdly relieved. For the first time, I felt like I had the power in our relationship, or whatever was left of it. But, of course, this wasn't the last time I'd hear from him. I figured that was the end of it. I mean, how many times can someone embarrass themselves before they take the hint, right? But nope. My dad didn't just stop at begging me in person. A week later, I get a letter in the mail. Yeah, a letter. Who even does that anymore? I almost threw it out, but curiosity got the better of me. It was this long, guilt-trippy monologue about how family is supposed to stick together, and how Bella's education was an investment in our future. I nearly spit out my coffee when I read that part. Our future? I hadn't been part of our anything since they kicked me out. I ignored the letter, just like I ignored his voicemails and texts that started rolling in after that. He even got Kathy to call me once, which was a bold move considering she barely acknowledged I existed when I lived with them. Her message was full of fake sweetness, like, "Jake, honey, I know things were tough back then, but let's move past it. We need you now." Yeah, okay, Kathy. But the cherry on top? Bella herself messaged me again. I was shocked she unblocked me just to send this absolute gem. It's really sad how bitter and selfish you've become. You'll regret this when you're old and alone. Good luck with your pathetic life. Pathetic life? I was the one with my own place and a stable job. Meanwhile, she was begging me to pay for her to party at college. So I blocked her again. I thought they'd give up after that. But oh no, they went nuclear. A few days later, I got served. Yeah, served. My dad actually had the audacity to try and sue me. When I saw the paperwork, I thought it was a prank. My dad was suing me for financial support. I didn't even know that was a thing. Turns out, there's some obscure law in our state that lets parents sue their adult kids for family maintenance if they're in financial need. The kicker? The paperwork claimed it was for Bella's education expenses. I was livid. I mean, not only did he abandon me when I needed him most, but now he was trying to guilt-trip a court into forcing me to bankroll the stepsister who made my life hell. So, I did what any sane person would do, I lawyered up. My lawyer, Mark, was a friend of a friend, and when I told him the story, he actually laughed. You're joking, right? This is the most ridiculous case I've ever seen. I wasn't joking, and he agreed to take the case. When we got to court, my dad and Bella were there, looking all smug like they thought this was a slam dunk. Kathy wasn't there, probably too busy strategizing at home. Dad gave this whole sob story about how I was his son, and it was my duty to help the family. He even started crying, which was rich considering he didn't shed a single tear when he kicked me out. Bella played her part too, acting like this innocent little victim whose dreams were being crushed because her selfish brother wouldn't help. I just sat there, waiting for my turn. When it came time to present my side, Mark tore them apart. He brought up everything, how they'd kicked me out, how I had to fend for myself as a teenager, and how I hadn't even lived with them for years. He even pulled out screenshots of Bella's nasty messages to me. The judge wasn't impressed with my dad's theatrics or Bella's crocodile tears. She actually called their actions shameful and dismissed the case outright. But here's the best part. Before we left, the judge said, "Mr. Wilson, it seems to me you owe your son an apology, not a lawsuit. I've never seen my dad look so small." Bella stormed out of the courtroom without even looking at me. But you think that would be the end, right? Nope. Things only got messy after that. I figured after the court case, they'd finally leave me alone. But I clearly underestimated just how shameless my dad and Bella could be. About 2 weeks later, I got a call from an unknown number. I usually don't answer those, but something told me to pick up. It was Kathy. "Jake," she started, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I just wanted to talk to you without all the drama. I think we can sort this out as a family." I rolled my eyes so hard I almost fell over. "There's nothing to sort out, Kathy. The judge made that pretty clear." "Jake, you don't understand," she said like I was some clueless kid. "Bella's future is at stake. She's going to be the first in our family to graduate from college. Don't you want to be part of something special?" I laughed. "Yeah, I'll pass. You and Dad made it pretty clear years ago that I'm not part of the family." "Don't be so dramatic," she snapped, dropping the sweet act. "This isn't about the past, it's about doing what's right. Your dad's health is suffering because of the stress you've caused, and Bella's been crying herself to sleep." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm the one causing stress? "Kathy, let me be very clear," I said, cutting her off. "I don't owe any of you a thing. Not money, not time, not even a conversation. Don't call me again." And I hung up. For a while, things went quiet. I thought maybe they'd finally gotten the message. But then one day, I came home to a note taped to my door. It was handwritten, and I recognized the sloppy handwriting right away. It was from Bella. The note said, "You think you're so much better than us now, don't you? Enjoy your sad little life, because when you finally realize you need us, we won't be there." I laughed out loud reading it. She actually thought I'd ever want to crawl back to them? It was pathetic, but honestly, I felt a little sorry for her. I mean, she'd been spoiled and coddled her whole life, and now she had no idea how to handle not getting her way. But even after all that, they still weren't done. After the note incident, I decided I was done playing games. I blocked every number, email, and social media account they could possibly use to contact me. I didn't care if they thought I was a jerk, I just wanted to be left alone. Things were peaceful for a while. I threw myself into my work, saved up every penny I could, and even started looking into launching my own small contracting business. Life was finally moving forward. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from an old high school friend, Tyler. He sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post my dad had made. The post said something like, "It breaks my heart when your own child turns their back on you. I did everything I could for Jake, but he's forgotten what family means. Now Bella's future is in jeopardy because he refuses to help. Please keep us in your prayers during this difficult time." I stared at the screen in disbelief. He had twisted the entire situation to make himself look like the victim, and people were falling for it. The comments were full of, "Stay strong, James," and "Jake should be ashamed of himself." But what really set me off? Bella had commented, "It's okay, Dad. We don't need him. Some people just don't understand loyalty." Loyalty? Loyalty? I was furious, but I didn't want to stoop to their level. So instead of replying, I took the high road, or at least my version of the high road. The next day, I made my own post. I didn't tag anyone or name names, but I laid out the truth. I explained how I'd been kicked out at 17 to make room for Bella, how I'd been homeless and working dead-end jobs to survive, and how they only came crawling back when they wanted my money. I didn't hold back, and I ended it with this. Family isn't about blood, it's about actions. And some people don't deserve to be called family. The post blew up. Friends from high school, old coworkers, and even some of my extended family reached out, shocked by what I'd been through. People started putting the pieces together, and suddenly my dad and Bella weren't looking so innocent anymore. That's when things really started to unravel for them. After my post went viral, the backlash hit them hard. Some of Dad's old friends and even a few relatives commented things like, "Wow, James, this isn't the story you told us." And, "Kicking your son out at 17? Not a good look." Apparently, the pressure got to him because a week later, I got a call from another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Bella, crying. "You ruined everything!" she yelled. "People at school are talking about me, and Dad's so stressed he can barely sleep. Why couldn't you just keep your mouth shut?" I stayed calm. "Why couldn't you just leave me alone?" I asked. "You brought this on yourselves." She kept ranting, saying I was a terrible person, that I'd always been jealous of her, blah blah blah. I hung up mid-sentence. That was the last time I spoke to either of them directly. But trust me, their drama didn't stop there. After I hung up on Bella, I thought that might finally be the end of it. But nope, turns out they weren't ready to go down without a fight. A couple of days later, I got a call from my landlord. Apparently someone had called and claimed I was subletting my apartment illegally. They also said I was running a shady business out of the unit. Obviously, none of that was true, and my landlord knew it. But it didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. At this point, I was done playing defense. I compiled everything, the messages, the court case, the note on my door, and now this. I didn't want revenge. I wanted them out of my life for good. So, I filed a harassment complaint. When they got served with the paperwork, I finally got an email from Kathy. All it said was, "This has gone too far. Drop this or we'll take it further." I replied with one sentence. "I'll see you in court, again." By the time we got to court for the harassment complaint, I was more than ready. My lawyer presented everything, the lawsuit they filed against me, the Facebook posts, the fake accusations to my landlord, and even Bella's note on my door. Kathy and Bella didn't show up, but my dad did, looking exhausted and defeated. He didn't even try to defend himself. He just sat there as the judge went through the evidence. The verdict? They were ordered to cease all contact with me immediately. If they tried to pull anything else, they'd face fines or even jail time. Afterward, my dad tried to approach me outside the courthouse, but a security officer stepped in before he could say a word. He just stood there, staring at me like he wanted to say something. But honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt free. But even with the court order, there was still one final twist I didn't see coming. A few weeks after the court order, I was starting to settle back into my life. No more calls, no more drama. It felt like I could finally breathe. But of course, that peace didn't last. One day, I came home to a letter in my mailbox. At first, I thought it was junk mail, but when I saw the return address, my stomach sank. It was from Bella. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The letter was bizarre. It wasn't her usual bratty tone. Instead, it was this rambling mix of an apology and self-pity. She said she didn't want things to end this way, that she only acted the way she did because she felt threatened when I was living with them, and that she just wanted her family to be whole again. But then, halfway through, the tone shifted. She started blaming me for turning Dad into a shell of himself and destroying her reputation. It ended with, "I hope you're happy now. You've ruined everything." I didn't even know what to feel. Anger? Amusement? Pity? All I knew was, I wasn't taking the bait. I shredded the letter and tossed it in the trash. But the fact that she'd found a way to contact me, even with the court order in place, made me realize this might not be over yet. After the letter, I decided to call my lawyer, just to make sure Bella's little stunt didn't violate the court order. Mark confirmed it was technically a breach, but since it was just one letter, it wasn't worth pursuing unless it escalated. "Just keep an eye out," he said. "But honestly, I don't think they can afford to mess with you again." For a while, he was right. Things stayed quiet, and I started focusing on my business plans. I landed a big contracting job, finally got my LLC set up, and for once, I felt like I was winning. But then, out of nowhere, my cousin Rachel called me. "You're not gonna believe this," she said. "Uncle James has been going around asking the family for money." "Why?" I asked, already bracing for the answer. "For Bella," she said. "Apparently she dropped out of college, And now she wants to start fresh at some private school, but they can't afford it. I couldn't help but laugh. And let me guess, they're blaming me for that too? Rachel hesitated. Kind of. They're saying you left them in the lurch and that you're the reason Bella's struggling. I shook my head. Unbelievable. Rachel sighed. I just thought you should know. They're making themselves out to be victims again. Let them, I said. If people are dumb enough to believe their sob stories, that's on them. I'm done worrying about it. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the last I'd hear of them. I thought I'd managed to let it go. I mean, what could they even do at this point? But, as usual, they found a way to stir the pot. A couple of months later, I got a call from one of my old high school friends, Sarah. She was always a bit of a gossip, so I wasn't surprised when she said, Jake, have you seen the post about you in the local community group? What post? I asked, already annoyed. She sent me a screenshot. It was from Kathy, of course. She'd written this whole dramatic post about how I'd abandoned my family, left my poor father in financial ruin, and refused to help my struggling sister, despite being well off. She even threw in some fake details about me supposedly bragging about my success while they suffered. The comments were a mix of sympathy for them and people asking why they were airing family drama online. Some people tagged me directly, which explained why Sarah thought I needed to see it. I was fuming. This wasn't just some petty family feud anymore. They were trying to ruin my reputation in the community. So, I decided to respond, but not how they expected. I made my own post in the same group, keeping it short and to the point. I explained how I'd been kicked out as a teenager, how I'd worked my way up from nothing, and how my family only came crawling back when they wanted my money. I didn't name names or throw insults. I let the facts speak for themselves. The response was overwhelming. People started calling out Kathy and Dad, asking why they hadn't supported me when I was younger, and why they felt entitled to anything from me now. The sympathy they'd been fishing for? Gone. And just like that, they'd lost whatever shred of credibility they had left. But, of course, they weren't done making a mess of things. After my post, Kathy and Bella completely lost it. Bella made another account to message me, ranting about how I'd turned everyone against them. She claimed I was ruining her life, and that it was my fault she had to drop out of college. I didn't even bother replying, I just reported and blocked her. Then my dad called from an unknown number. I didn't answer, but his voicemail was a gem. Jake, you've gone too far. You've embarrassed us in front of everyone. I hope you're proud of yourself. Proud? Yeah, I was. Proud I didn't cave, proud I finally stood up for myself, and proud I had cut them out for good. Or so I thought. Because just when I believed they couldn't sink any lower, they tried one last desperate move. A few days after my dad's voicemail, I got a call from Rachel again. You're not gonna believe this. She started, sounding half amused, half exasperated. Your dad and Kathy are telling people you're only successful because they set you up for life. I laughed out loud. Set me up? By kicking me out and letting me sleep in my car? Exactly, Rachel said. But that's not all. They're saying you owe them because they taught you independence. I couldn't even be mad anymore. It was just pathetic. Let them talk, I said. Anyone who believes that nonsense isn't worth my time. And that's exactly how I handled it. I stopped responding, stopped checking their drama, and just focused on building my business and my life. Last I heard, Bella still hadn't gone back to school. Kathy and Dad had burned most of their bridges with family and friends, and they were stuck in their own mess. As for me, I'm thriving. Business is booming, I've got real friends who've stuck by me, and I've never felt freer. The lesson here? Sometimes family isn't blood, it's the people who actually have your back. That's it. They're out of my life for good, and honestly, I couldn't be happier.